Welcome to another episode of Bringing Down the Grindhouse, a podcast where we discuss horror in media, and today we're going to be discussing Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the movie that just came out.
The movie!
How's it going, John?
It's going well. I enjoyed this movie. Did you like it, Eddie?
I dug it. I think it's
It was
better
a lot
than,
of fun.
Yeah, it's better than Goosebumps, I would say.
It was a fantastic movie. I liked it. It was a lot of fun.
I think it was also that I sort of went in with not a whole lot of expectations.
Yeah.
I was just ready to watch it because I wanted to see what they were going to do.
Because the source material is really simple.
Yeah.
Also, we went over it, and so I think that it was made it very malleable for them to turn this into like a broad story as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas I think the Goosebumps stories, like what Eddie was saying, probably have a little bit less detail, or they have too much detail, and so they probably feel a little out of place because it's not its own standalone story. Also, the fact that they're just kind of goofy.
I feel like
silly
Goosebumps
kinda.
is not fully scary enough. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't... It's more accessible to, like, a very young audience.
Right. Whereas Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was a little bit beyond it, where they were using some serious stories.
Yeah, I also feel like the model for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was kind of like Aesop Fables or Grimm's Fairy Tales in a way.
Yes. Yeah,
Or
definitely.
even like Roald Dahl was kind of like inspired by those kind of stories as well.
Oh, yeah,
from,
totally.
like Grimm's Fairy Tales. But let's go back to...
Yeah, just discussing where does this. Oh, well, we just got out of the theater and saw it just a few hours ago.
Yeah, so this is another special edition episode where we went to go see the movie, and then we came and did a podcast right after.
We should call this our silver screen episode, one of the silver screen episodes.
Nice.
Right, like that,
like
right?
that,
All right,
yeah.
so we'll coin the phrase silver screen episode.
Well, I'll put it on the little description. For
Silver
that one.
screen, scary stories to tell in the dark.
Right.
Yeah. I like it. I'm gonna be a marketing guy one day.
Right. So just some quick things. The director was Andre Overdahl.
He did Troll Hunter.
Yep. What else did you mentioned another one he did?
No, just Troll Hunter.
Oh, okay. So he just did that one, and then of course there's
Notably Troll Hunter, but
Right.
other things he's probably done.
Yeah, that'd be like the most recognizable one. It was produced by Guillermo del Toro, which they heavily use his name
He
for
also
like
got a
advertising.
star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame this week.
Fuck yeah, that was great. He even brought like a Mexican flag with him.
Oh,
it was
fuck
like,
yeah. Wait. Oh, I think I saw that picture. He's just
Yeah.
walking in, just like, oh, victory.
He was holding it like, he was holding it like a
Gloriously.
victory flag. It was so great. I
That's
love
glorious.
that. The screenplay was written by Dan Hagman and Kevin Hagman, so I'm guessing brothers.
What did they do before?
I honestly don't know. They don't have like a clickable thing
Okay.
anywhere on the internet, so this could be like one of their first like
Super new
outgoings
people
out. Yeah.
on the game.
But they did a good job. I like the way that it was introduced. So the movie starts off. You get like sort of this panoramic shot of everything that's going on in the city that they're in. I
This
forget
little
which.
town.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
It's in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
is the state. The city I fuzzy on.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. They show you a quick sign and then it moves on. But it's set in the 60s, and this is the time period when like they're drafting for Vietnam, and then Nixon is all over the TV trying to get reelected.
Yep. Nixon's
Well,
reelection.
LBJ is still in office, and
Yes.
Nixon is
Oh, that's it.
trying to run for office.
Yeah. So you get that setting and backstory like right up front, and so you know where it's set, what's going on, and then they set the tone with the song, which is what Season of the Witch.
Yes.
Yeah, so they play that right at the beginning, and so they give you exactly how you're supposed to be feeling for the film. It's a little bit of backstory, and then they just go right into it.
I feel like this movie should have been a perfect Halloween movie to watch. Like,
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
It
For,
takes
for
place
release of Halloween and stuff, and I feel like horror movies don't do that often now these days. They kind of
Yeah.
stick more to the August-September release, or they don't really like to go for the end of October.
Right.
Like the last Halloween movie did that, but not like movies like these.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, it was like a PG-13 movie. They were trying to get as many people to go watch it as possible, and so it was open to a larger crowd. But I mean, I liked the way that they started it. Kudos to them for having the main character be Stella, the little girl who's also a writer, and then also having what's his name, Ramon, as another
Ramon.
main character. So
Who's Mexican?
yeah, Mexican main character who was there, and they like went straight into the racial tensions at one point.
Oh, definitely. It was super. I was really surprised
Yeah,
by that.
I was surprised by it
like,
too.
fuck. I was like, this is PG-13 right now.
Right.
Wait, this is a little too serious for that, right? Isn't that right?
No.
Maybe not. Maybe
They
I don't know what
just-
I'm talking about.
They just went full force with it. But I
Yeah.
mean, so you get
Dropping
the intro.
the comment wet back.
Yeah, dude, that was crazy.
Yeah, I was
Um,
like, fuck.
It's Halloween night. So that's like where it starts. And you even have like the old school radio announcer who is like telling you all about what's going on to get prepped for the night.
He's like Wolfman Jack of.
Yeah, it was cool. I wonder who they got for the narration for that voice because that was really good.
Hey there, you folks out there. On Halloween's night. You all ready to get a little spooky with your good friend Wolfman Jack here?
And I felt like they immediately started playing with stereotypes that we are familiar with. So having the teenage bully who's also a football player. And
I thought he was like
douche.
mentally challenged looking.
Yeah.
His face, the entire movie looked like a very long horse face, and just like, what?
I thought he was like high or something.
Right, he
at
definitely
first.
looked kind of methy.
Yeah, something
So
was
he
going on.
looked a little methy, right? I mean, and they're like, oh, "Are you drinking?" I think he's doing more than that, Mom.
Right.
Like
They did a good job.
Oh
of making
yeah, I've
it.
been drinking, Mom. What do you think? I'll pick up your eggs.
That was weird. His mom was like, totally just like, "Oh, you've been drinking? Take the fucking eggs to your neighbor's house. What are you doing?"
like, yeah, as if like it's just like I'm never gonna stop his addiction.
Right.
Like-
Yeah. Really though. No
Fuck
dad
you,
apparently,
Harold.
so-
I hate how you look at me.
Oh, shit. Yeah, that was weird. So I mean, they did a good job of making you hate this guy because he was already like a piece of shit, and he was just bullying everybody in the fucking film.
He's got everything you loathe.
Like the bullies
and you could loathe about a person is
Right.
in this teenager.
And it's also that movie, that scary movie thing where you see them and you're like, yeah, that dude's dying first. You're like, for sure, that dude is gonna fucking get killed. And then you
But they
see
don't do
him-
it in like Stranger Things or It, which is
Right.
sort of that model.
Yeah, that's fair. They also started off by showing you clues of the story. So if you had read the stories beforehand, you would know which story it is. And in this case, it was the Scarecrow one, the Harold, I think it was. And for some reason, he's beating the fuck out of a Scarecrow, which is really weird in itself. But he was like,
Fuck
yeah.
you, Harold.
Yeah, and just fucking like hits it with a bat.
I
That
bet
was
that's
super
the
weird.
story that R.L. Stein gravitated towards when he wrote When Scarecrows Walk at Midnight.
Oh, dang, yeah, that's true.
'Kay.
I wonder which came first.
No, well, that the Scarecrow Walks to Midnight was like secondary to this story
Oh,
from
gotcha.
the Harold story. But I'm figuring because there's a documentary out where they talk about the books,
Right.
just as this movie got released. So it'd
Oh,
be kind of
okay.
interesting to watch that.
Okay. So we so we get introduced to the main characters, which is going to be Stella, who is like I would say probably the main character and actor in the movie, and then you have
Our hero girl.
Yeah, she's essentially like one of the heroes. Although they didn't play her or Ramon too much as a hero, they were just kind of like
Well, they were just kids. They were just-
yeah, the main people where stuff was happening to them and they figured it out. And then they had their friends. They had August or Augie, what they
Augie.
called him, and then they
the
had
hypochondriac kid who's like,
Chuck
you know,
was the other kid. I'm pretty sure it was Chuck.
It's Augie, Stella, Ramon, and then I don't remember. He's the
Girl's younger brother.
Yeah, exactly.
Chuck is.
Oh, it's Chuck.
Yeah. Okay.
and
Alright,
yeah.
so-
His
yeah,
big
so-
sister Ruth.
Yeah, and then his big sister Ruth, and so Ruth is supposed to be going on a date, and then we find out she's going on
With
a
a
date
douchebag.
with that douchebag guy we've already seen. But he's been picking on Chuck and his friends for years now. So Chuck gets a bag full of shit
Karma.
and is like, "All right, we're gonna get him this year."
I
Dude,
thought
he fucking blitzkriegs that
Yeah,
motherfucker.
that was
like,
so good.
He does that. He gives them a false bag full of poo.
Yep.
First, they open it up. It smells like shit. They stop the car to throw it out there. They egg the car while they're distracted.
Then he lights the
And then
bag
he
of poop
lights
on fire,
a little paper bag of poo on fire, and then
throws it in his lap.
it's his own shit too, because
Yes.
you see him fishing
He
it out
was,
of the
like,
toilet
taking it
earlier
out.
in the beginning of the movie. Oh man.
it's like, what are you doing? Nothing. Privacy.
And so this is where you this is definitely where you come to like really like that character. And
Yes.
just for that moment, this is like his awesome moment.
Right.
You really come to care about that character. So it was
Yeah.
a good way for you to introduce like them as a group of friends, and then like the hijinks that they're getting into on this Halloween, and then how
Right.
Chuck's sort of like the prankster kind of class clown individual.
Right. That's also like
Dropping a
the
bag of
pivot
fiery
point.
poo.
That's like the inciting moment for the story. And it just gets going right away. This is
Yeah.
like 10, 15 minutes into the film. So
Yeah.
you don't waste any time getting into the main story. And they sort of had to, because what they did was they overlaid a larger story on top of the smaller stories that they included and tied them all together with the main story, which was the book.
Mm-hmm.
But
This was mostly like the first book's stories, right?
Yes, I think it was all first book. I don't think they used anything from.
Yeah, it all seems like stuff from the very first.
Yeah,
books.
so
I'm wondering if this might be a trilogy then.
Yeah, I think they were trying. I think they wanted to see how good it would do, and then if it made
it
its
seems
money
to
back.
be getting a good reaction.
Yeah, it got like
people.
an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's like it's fair. Like for what it is, I think it was good.
But that's just the tomatoes. Their opinions are
yeah,
always...
they're kind of assholes, and it's because it's all the critics who are super old. Like what's his name, Ebert.
And Roper.
Ebert actually.
I don't give a
puts
fuck
in
about what Ebert has to say about
I mean,
movies.
Rotten Tomatoes is just a collection of like the most popular
Yeah.
reviewers and whatnot.
But you know
so
what I
they
mean?
just kind of they just basically say, does this person say bad or does this person say
Yeah.
it's good? And then they just kind of compile that.
I like
So-
reading all the negative ones just to see what they were nitpicky about.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the best way you can find if people actually gave a shit about the movie or if
Right.
they just had like an initial, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Or just something legitimate. To
Yeah,
say.
Yeah,
or-
exactly. Sometimes they have good criticisms and negative reviews for sure.
They do actually. They end
I
up
agree.
like cutting things out and whatnot.
I liked how Tommy went out with the character Harold,
Mhm.
where it was a very clever death on how they took Tommy out, where he takes him out with the pitchfork, and Harold takes him against the pitchfork, and he's like turning into a scarecrow himself, where he's just vomiting up straw. And
Yeah, I love that. I love the way they transition to that story. But basically, the way it sort of kicks off is they do this prank on the bully, which I can't remember his name, and they end up running away. So they run away.
Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy. They run away from Jimmy and end up in a drive-in theater where they're playing A Night of the Living Dead, which at that point I guess just came out,
Yeah.
and they were like watching it in the drive-in. And this is where they meet Ramon. They jump into his car. And they're just like, we're trying to hide. Shh. And he's like, what the fuck?
They introduced Ramon much earlier than that.
Yeah,
too.
you get to see him driving around.
He's hanging out, and a police officer approaches him, and then like questions why he's there.
Yeah, so
And
that
whatnot.
was interesting because not only did they include the overlaying story, but they had sort of a mini story with him where one, he's Mexican, so the guy was being a little bit racist with him and being like, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" But they also had the story element of him dodging the draft, and so they were like, that's probably what he thought. He thought he was dodging the draft, and he was also Mexican. So he was putting those two together and figuring out like why is he here in the town, because it's a small town and they know everyone there. So it's
Yep.
the sheriff, and he's like, "What's going on?"
Yeah, and this random brown person walks in, and
Right.
right? Like,
But there's
what's
a-
going on?
Yeah, who are you?
Yeah, who are you? What's going
Yeah.
on?
there was also a reason why he drafted or was trying to avoid the draft.
Yeah,
Because
because which he tells later. Yeah,
Yeah.
his older brother got essentially
he got
killed
hung
over there.
in pieces.
Came back in pieces. Yeah,
Just like the monster that's chasing him in this movie.
interesting.
Holy shit!
I didn't
did
think
not
about
put
that.
that together
Yeah,
at all.
the jangling man.
Good
Yeah.
fucking job, Eddie.
Yeah.
That's a good fucking.
That was
one.
one of my favorite creatures out of this movie, next
Oh, it
to
was
the
super
pale
cool.
woman. And just like,
It just falls apart to chase him again.
That was great.
I
Yeah,
love that shit.
it was like he knew what he needed to do to escape that, but that was pretty good. Yeah.
yeah, I also feel like these monsters definitely inspired like people like Junji Ito and people who developed Silent Hill.
Oh, totally.
Because these creatures, like the creature that falls apart and puts himself back together again, the silent
Yeah.
woman, there was like the creature with the missing toe. Those are sort of like creatures I felt like are very what inspired Junji Ito's work, and people who did Silent Hill being very existential kind of creatures.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Each story was kind of designed to tell about a certain element of fear that some people might be feeling. Like even with just Ruth, who has the spiders. So some people already have like arachnophobia, basically, and that can be enough to trigger someone's fear.
She already has a fear of pustules on her face, and is
Also
really
that.
concerned with her beauty.
It's
being
like that body
destroyed.
horror sort of thing that you end up getting.
Yeah, so she doesn't like pustules and her face being all or her skin being messed up. So of course
Right.
her horror is spiders bursting out of the side of her face.
Oh god, yeah,
It's
that's like
great.
the ultimate fear, and
It'd
then
be
it
the
ends up
perfect
like,
YouTube video of popping a pimple.
oh
Yeah.
god. I mean, the whole event sends her to basically she goes crazy,
Yeah.
and like has to go to a mental asylum after that. So like even though she technically didn't
the
die,
trauma.
she ends up stuck pretty much like
It was interesting that they also took her on their journey wherever they were going outside
Right.
the town. So I'm wondering where that's going to transition for a second movie, if that's what they're going to go for.
oh in the very end scene.
Yes.
Okay, I was wondering about that. I was like, is that Ruth? I couldn't tell.
That
was her.
Okay.
was
Yeah, she had a
Chuck's
big scar on her
Yeah,
face.
I thought so. Okay, then I was confused as to who it was. But so they get to they get to the drive-in, and this is where they have their first like serious encounter with Jimmy, who's leaning into Ramon's driver's side window and is like, "You guys need to get out of the car," with the bat in hand. And then this is when he gets really close to Ramon and is like, he calls him a wetback, and I was like, "Yo, this is like a straight slur. Like they really brought this into the movie." And then he's like, "You smell like shit. You need to get away from my car." And I was just like, what the fuck?
Because they threw poop on him.
Yeah, exactly. So he had shit on him from the earlier scenes. And then some random dude is like, "Yo, you need to get the fuck out of the way because you're blocking the movie," and like walks them out. I was like, who is this random guy who was like...
I love that he just like tries to be like, "Hey, Al, we gotta watch the movie, you see?"
Yeah, and it was like, you guys need to leave
it's
right
like
now.
the dad from Us is just like, "No, you all know I called the police, so if you all want to get crazy, we can get crazy." It's just like that passive aggressive way of just like trying to enforce like dominance.
Right. Oh, totally. And then after that is sort of when they leave and go to the haunted house, right?
They decide to go do something really scary for Halloween and go investigate this house.
That's it.
That's when Stella starts telling the kind of backstory on the on Sarah Bellows.
Yeah, well, on the Bello family, who
yes.
owned the house as well as making the town kind of famous
because they were a paper mill.
For the paper mill that they had made. And so you sort of get this story about Sarah being trapped in the house and how she was kept in the basement, and she ends up being the author of the book that they get, which starts telling all of these stories that we're familiar with from the books.
It was sort of funny too, because Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the Goosebumps movie has a similar plot as well as to this movie as well. It has like a magical book that will make these creatures appear out of nowhere. Just kind of like how the board game Jumanji works.
Oh,
in a
yeah.
way too.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, they sort of added in, they wanted you to know more of the story, more of the lore behind what was going on. I like had to stop when I was watching it and be like, "Yo, why are these kids so good at picking locks?"
Just Ramon.
No, even Stella does it with his knife for the second lock.
Oh fuck.
And
That's
I was just
right,
like,
huh?
"Yo, what the hell?" Like, well, of course he had a
levels.
switchblade, which is really funny, but also
Because
like,
I kept asking, "Hey, do you have a switchblade,
he's like,
man?"
he's got
We,
switchblade.
we missed
only
the Thieves
Hispanics
Guild
and Latinos
backstory.
carry switchblades.
Yeah, for real. And somehow they unlocked it no problem and got into the house. So I was like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
But for some reason, that was the most unbelievable thing for me.
They're both kind of nerds. I guess they'd look it up maybe.
Yeah.
I love how he's just like, "Hey man, do you have a switchblade? Why would you think I have a switchblade?" He has a switchblade. And fucking pulls out a switchblade later and
on.
you're like, yeah, we all knew it, right?
I love that. Yeah, that was great.
Then he starts dancing to West Side Story.
my
Right.
God.
Yeah, they'll start doing the dance. They run. They walk up to you doing the snap.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Oh my God.
But right. So they get into the house. They find this secret door that leads down to the basement, and this is where they find the book. And Stella finds the book on the shelf, and that's kind of. But this is where they incorporate one of the songs from the book. She plays this little sound box that is the Hearst song.
Yep. That we explored. Our lovely friend Dorian Bell sang it on one of our past episodes where we covered the books.
The 5th episode, I think, was the one that we had it on. So if you want to hear what that song sounds like, Dorian does the full version of that song, and it's fucking great. And I recognized it immediately when we were watching it. I was like, "Yo, that's the song." And you hear some of the lyrics later with the older lady who used to be, I guess, their maid.
Yeah, I used to live in the house with them.
Used to be like living with them, and
The daughter of the maid.
Daughter of the maid.
That's
there you
right.
go.
Yeah,
Yes.
the daughter of
who
the
I
maid.
thought was Oprah Winfrey at first.
It did look like her.
Yeah,
It could have. It could have been.
But
it could have been, but it was
wasn't.
not.
I was
That lady is in the Badlands, the newest show
Into the
on
Badlands,
Netflix.
that kung fu
Yeah,
with
Into
no
the Badlands.
guns.
Yeah, she is like this new sorceress that comes in that show.
Maybe it was just her hairdo.
She
It
seems to
reminded me
play
of the
magical-
Oracle from The Matrix.
Also that.
It also had that, but I think her face is just broader. She has a broader face.
They
I
did
thought.
like the blind seer thing where she's
Yeah.
like she has like whites over her eyes and has like long dreads and everything. So that was cool. But they thought she was crazy, but really she was just telling them like what was happening. So that was interesting. They incorporated some of that info into it.
Yeah, I love all the cool references to the books that they make. Like, and they make some
Right.
of those stories that when you read them without passion and whatnot, where you're like trying to make it scary. They make them chilling. Like the Big Toe story is an actual is narratively like played out exactly as it is in the story, essentially.
Right.
In the books anyway.
My big toe.
Yeah.
And so they get the book, and then they get a little bit of a scare because Jimmy shows up and locks them in, and then they're trying to get out, and then eventually, God, I don't think they showed who unlocked it when they were leaving.
The ghost.
It was a ghost, right? It wanted the story
Sarah,
to play
the
out,
ghost
basically.
Of Sarah.
Oh, so it was Sarah. That's right.
When the door closes on them?
Yeah.
When the door closes on them, isn't that Jimmy that does it?
He closes it and then he leaves.
Yeah. And then the ghost opens it up
he
for
tosses
them.
Ruth in there first, and then he closes it because she's like, you need to let my little brother go. And then and then so he leaves, and then they're like trying to get out, and they realize that the door's open, and they just don't care. They're like, yeah, let's get out of here. And then this is where you get sort of what the book is. She's reading the story and realizes like the ink is fresh, basically, and it's also blood. So it's like it's being written. It's like foretelling what's going to happen with people, and it's Sarah writing it somehow. And so the first death is Jimmy, which of course we're like, I don't give a fuck about this guy. Mm-hmm. So I was like, it's about time, even though it's only been like 30 minutes of the movie. And his death is pretty creative. And a clever way to avoid violence in the movie, because he essentially gets hunted down by Harold.
More like gore, to avoid doing excess gore.
Yeah,
excess
gore, because
you
see the haste.
Prongs?
Well, he stabs Harold with a pitchfork,
Yep.
and then Harold grabs it and stabs him back. But instead of blood coming out of his stomach, it's straw that starts pouring out of his stomach, and then he starts coughing up straw, and eventually turns into a scarecrow himself. Which I would only assume Harold just hangs him up and then leaves him there. And so that's the story of him. And this is...
Or there's multitudes of scarecrows out there,
Right.
probably.
I guess there's a bunch. I couldn't tell.
Just one, but I'm just thinking maybe he just took Harold's place.
And that's true.
Yeah, because there's certain creatures in the
world. Oh, do you think it's like a cycle? Like that always sort of happens in that story?
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Pumpkinhead?
No.
Remember the actor who played Bishop in Aliens?
Yeah.
He tries to have this old witch bring this old demonic creature back from the dead so he can avenge his son's death, and then he becomes the next Pumpkinhead.
Oh shit.
So that
okay. So he's just getting a replacement for him. I love that he was still in his outfit. He had the football jacket, the typical Letterman jacket. Mm-hmm. And then this is when everyone finds out that just this kid went missing. And they're not sure exactly what's going on yet, but Stella is like, I need to know, is it him? Did something happen?
It's after Jimmy destroys Ramon's car.
Yes.
And does that gnarly ass part, which is fucked.
Then the cop is more suspicious of him.
Yeah, and then the cop is more suspicious of him for that.
He's connecting it where he's like, oh, you probably retaliated against him for fucking up your car. But he can't prove it, so he's just kind of waiting for something to happen. Mm-hmm. Right, and so that's what happens. And then what happens after Jimmy?
After Jimmy dies, they start reading the book again, and then Augie's death, I think, is the next one after that. That happens.
Toe.
Yep, the big toe. The big toe happens.
I think that would definitely turn Quentin Tarantino off from Feet entirely.
Yeah.
Nah, he's a weirdo. He probably liked it.
A decaying toe in your mouth from stew.
I know. I love that he's on the phone too, where he's like, I want to eat this stew. And she's like, what stew? And he's like, somebody made it. Yeah. And it's just and then just eats it cold. What a weirdo. But he is scooping it out, and they call him on the little walkie-talkie, which is great because it's the only way they communicate it. And I like that that's becoming a common theme for young teenage groups for a certain time period. They're just all using walkie-talkies because they're so close to each other in the neighborhood.
Just like they did in Stranger Things.
Right.
I think they even did in the movie Ed, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe. I think they did.
Have to go back and watch it again before we see
Have
the
you
new
guys seen God, what is it? The Suicide Diaries?
No. I've not seen.
They did it in that one too. The group of boys are watching all the girls who live across from them, and they're all communicating over walkie-talkie. So that's another thing. It's common in horror films. But yeah, so they see the story getting written, which apparently it just writes itself, and they get to watch it unfold. And so they find out that Augie is going to be in one of the stories, and it's the woman who's lost her big toe and wants it back. And so she just
which they actually use that image from the original book.
Yes, the way that her face looks is they put it exactly how it was and put that into CGI as well as like practical effects, which looks so good in the movie.
It's very, very clear that the people that made this movie or the everyone that worked on it really had a love for the source material.
Oh yeah,
really.
totally.
I get like there was no like these were not just like cheap references. These were like very like effective and useful references that they were making.
Just even
Right.
like the pale woman too. She's like directly from page to screen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that was great. They really got down on the details for all of the creatures. I love that they got a contortionist to do the jangling man, to like do all of the weird positions that he was walking in. And I love the sheriff's encounter with him as well.
It was like the reaction from the thing. You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Yep.
Bah, bah, bah.
Just pulls out his fucking
Instantly starts
revolver.
shooting it.
He empties his whole revolver into the head and is just like, I'm not fucking with this right now.
Yeah.
That was great. I love that. I appreciate it that they had the characters look more into the Bello family without it seeming too tedious.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it seemed very organic and natural, and it flowed together really. It was all woven together very, very well.
Yeah, and it helped to have that overlaying story on top of all of the other ones, so it didn't make it seem like a detached anthology. It was like you had all the stories brought together by this one larger narrative, and they added more depth to it by having it during, you know, the 60s during Vietnam getting drafted and all the other things.
Well,
So it
takes,
worked
like,
out
these-
really well.
Like these super fantastical horrors with like the real world horrors that they were going through at the time.
There's definitely some social commentary about what was going on, and I don't think it was a mistake that they chose the jangling man for the Mexican character who had just lost his brother to the Vietnam War and how he was avoiding the draft. So that was interesting. That must have been like just a small, subtle thing that the writers put into it, and it worked really well without it being excessive and pandering in some way to like try to get people in to the story for like that specific reason.
Yeah, I would have been really disappointed with this movie if they had done something like an anthology where they just did like
Just
they just
back
did
to
like
back
if they
stories.
just did that, it wouldn't have been nearly as awesome. I don't think. I think I would have been a little bored by it, to be honest.
Something
Yeah.
like a movie like VHS did in a way, or Tales from the Dark Side,
Yeah, pretty much.
or Creepshow even. That like
I felt like the
anthologies.
pacing through the whole film was really good. There was never a dull moment for me, and even when they were like slowed down and they were researching, you were getting important information for the story about what was going on.
And there's the payoff right at the end. So all the research and everything has a huge payoff in the very end.
Yes, you kind of find out that Sarah was very innocent in the whole story, and in fact not the one being like eating children and using their blood for the thing for the book.
They find a really old piece of recording technology.
Yeah, I fucking love
wax
that.
cylinder.
That
Yeah.
was such a nice touch for the way that like it would just sound. So like that is so accurate. Like they got exactly the type of machine, the wax cylinder, what it would sound like. And then you have like probably the scariest bit where you hear her older brother basically like torturing her, like electrocuting her
Yep.
to get him to tell the story. But then she tells the story about one of the characters then in that
Yep.
recording.
Yeah.
So it's like they tied it into like they had to listen to that recording. So it was interesting that they did something.
I think
like
also
that.
Del Toro likes old things. Like,
Oh, totally.
like antiques is like,
Yeah.
if you watch most of his movies, there's like gears and like old sort of like machinery that was
It's so close
made.
to like steampunk stuff. But
yeah,
like
with not overblowing steampunk.
yeah,
how
exactly.
It is.
That's really true. I think he likes things like that because they usually have a story behind them. They're not going to be like a fresh new item that doesn't have much story behind it.
But also, this is like a ghost story, and
Yeah.
he also called ghost stories like stone tapes, where
Hmm.
there's just like these spirits are not here to haunt you; they're trying to tell you something.
Oh yeah, totally. And in this case, she wasn't just torturing people for fun. I don't even think she really knew the extent of what was happening when she was writing the stories.
Yeah, she was the Sarah Bellows
Yeah.
spirit. The spirit, in my interpretation of it anyway, was that the spirit is basically her leftover rage energy.
Yeah.
And it's basically manifesting in her stories because she was a writer, so she would write, and so it manifests in her writing. She takes
Yeah.
out her rage on everyone else and essentially becomes the monster that her family was to her.
Right.
Because her truth is never spoken.
I didn't understand. Did they lock her away because she had like albinism?
So no. So she knew that basically the family was dumping mercury into the local water.
Oh shit.
So
I
she knew
missed
about
that
it and
bit.
went public with it. And so they were basically like, "You're telling lies, blah 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 blah. You have a
Oh.
problem." And her being albino may have just been a thing that
Oh,
she just
gotcha.
had, but it's
Okay.
the fact that she was exposing the family's bullshit.
So they're just trying to keep her locked
and
away.
they're trying to keep her locked up and
quiet.
shut up. Yeah, lock up, shut up. We're doctors. We can. One of them's a doctor, so he can just legally be like, "Oh, she needs me."
Right. Yeah, and he ends up being the doctor at the hospital who is pretty much torturing her.
I do like evil doctors. Evil doctors are cool.
There's a scene in the movie when they're in the house at first where Chuck is in the closet.
Oh, that was good. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me like the shot from The Shining, where Jack finds the lady in the tub.
Oh yeah. Huh.
And then when Wendy also finds the guy in the tuxedo and the guy going down on the guy in the tuxedo in the bear suit, like that seemed like almost like a similar scene to me.
I totally forgot about that.
It's the most randomest scene in The Shining that you could ever
It really
watch.
is, yeah.
It's just like, what purpose is this moment right here that's happening? Just like, what is going on here? Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, that was, man, he put in some weird stuff for that. I felt like I had to watch The Shining a few times over to really get every single thing that he had included into that. But it was good. I liked it. Another thing I really liked about the movie was certain like small pieces, like the book being unburnable. Like it kept reappearing back at her place even though she had left it somewhere. So like basically signaling to her that she had to resolve something. And in this case, it was getting to find the real story behind why Sarah was locked away, and then sort of helping her get to that moment where she releases all of her anger.
Well, if
you're good.
If you see like certain horror movies when they try to burn like an ancient evil or artifact or whatever, it doesn't get destroyed. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It stays intact in one piece, like the Necronomicon from Evil Dead, like the remake, the book from Hocus Pocus,
Babadook book.
Yep.
It's been a while since I watched the Babadook.
We got to do that one. It's such a good film for something like that. I really appreciate it too. I felt like the writers, they were using things that are common in stories, so like very formula things that you might find in a story. Yeah, they're using the tropes without it being, without you being like that's a trope.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was effectively used. That was used in a way that you weren't.
Well, these are like really good writing elements. Yeah. So they included them in a way that was unique to the story, and it worked well for weaving all of the stories together and then pushing you forward into the narrative and finding out more about them. And you also you start off like sort of misunderstanding Sarah, and then you end up understanding a little more at the end, which is also putting a nicer light on hauntings, on ghosts, and why someone might be sticking around.
I'm kind of curious. I don't remember if the Sarah character or story was part of the original story, or was that made just for this movie?
I believe it was original just for the story. I don't remember seeing anything about Sarah.
Okay, yeah. It almost kind of reminded me of Mama.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I've seen the movie Mama, but I kind of prefer the shorter story to that as opposed to the lengthier version of Mama.
Right. Okay.
Which I think also Guillermo del Toro produced that one as well.
I think he did for that one as well. He's been really good about getting his hand into things that he really enjoys, and he usually will be a really positive influence.
Big fat Mexican who likes to put many projects on his plate, and then he'll just like disperse it out.
Yeah, he gets them all done. He's been working nonstop since like he got into being a director, and has just been producing a lot of really good stuff.
I want to see his Haunted Mansion movie so badly.
Is it just me, or is he just a Latino George R. R. Martin?
Yeah, that's very accurate. He looks almost exactly like him.
Just a Latino man.
Yeah,
that's it.
I love when he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, because he showed up with the Mexican flag, gave like a little speech about it, and so it was definitely some good stuff. Yeah. So going back to the main story on what was happening, what was next? I think so. Augie gets taken, and then
they go to the hospital
after that. Or they go to the hospital, to look for the records,
That's
medical
right.
records.
They go to look for the medical records.
The pale woman in the red room.
That's it. So then next is Chuck. Then when he sees, so he's had a dream.
Well, the next lady that gets hit is his sister. His sister gets hit first.
Oh, that's
with the
right.
spiders, and so they run over to the school to go try to save her, because the book starts writing a third one after that. And so they go there, and the pimple.
They think they save her.
Bursts.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, like she didn't actually die, but then they find out later from the sheriff that she went crazy, and they didn't like sort of not really saved her, but she's still like technically alive. So
I think that was the one point of the movie that I was a little fuzzy on. I was like, this one's a little bit kind of. It's a little ham-fisted. Her condition's a little ham-fisted in there, kind of.
They didn't revisit her, is why.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah. Once the characters were gone, they
had to just like stick to the main plot, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if the movie could have continued without her scene. Like if she had just been left alone, or like she just vanishes and like they would have continued.
Just
But-
like how the other kids were.
But they had it. But they included one of the main stories, which was the red spot.
Yep.
So that was definitely something that was in the books, and so they brought it. They brought that story into the movie, and then afterwards is when they go find the other records.
Yep, they go find. Well, they just go to the book starts writing another story, and they're like, "Who the fuck is it? Oh shit, it's my sister!" And then they go save Ruth, and then they go look for medical records on Sarah Bellows. They go to the hospital, and that's where the pale woman shows up, and then Chuck meets his end there.
Yes, he gets like absorbed.
Yeah,
She just like embraces him.
Yeah,
and just, like,
she gives him a hug. It's funny because she's walking towards him with her arms out, like to
very
give a hug.
slowly.
I was definitely expecting like her mouth to open up and
Yeah,
just start eating him, but no,
dude.
it just like into my
Like
belly.
No Face from Spirited Away.
Yeah, yes, legit.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was gonna happen too.
Come to me.
That probably
come
would have
to
been
sweet
too violent.
Henrietta.
That was great.
That's what it felt like. Like
Yeah,
Henrietta from
honestly.
Evil Dead 2.
Someone's in my fruit cellar. Someone with a fresh soul.
Oh shit, that's right. I was like, totally forgot about that line.
Funny.
I love that. So he gets absorbed, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And so, what's the next thing?
After that, I believe after Chuck goes down, it's just Ramon and Stella.
And they're in prison.
Oh yeah, they get pulled up. I get the cops, and that's when the shambling man, the jangling man,
Yeah.
excuse me, the
He had
jangling
like
man
a very
shows up.
rhyming, kind of like very like phonetic kind of name.
They even
him.
had the nice reference to the dog, who in the story, a jangling man drops from the chimney, and the dog dies of fright, like right there. But in this case, the dog runs away and is like, "Nope,
Nope, I'm not gonna die here.
And so the sheriff is like, "What the fuck is going on?" And that's when he delivers his line where he's like, "You gotta be shitting me!"
Yeah.
And like pulls out his revolver and just shoots the head after the head like says something. It says the line from the book.
Tilly dolly do.
Yeah, something. And then
Solomon
assembles
Grundy.
himself, gets up, and like violently snaps his neck, which was like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Whoa.
All right.
That was like the most half-assed snapping of a neck ever.
Yeah, it was kind of like a like.
Yeah,
sort
there
of-
was no fight there. Nope, he just dies.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have been too comedic or too cruel for the dog to get like die off?
People are really serious about dogs not dying, so they did a good thing by letting the dog run away.
Unlike how John Carpenter did it in The Thing.
I love that. I love that the dog is like the thing. It escapes as a dog, and then how those movies just like are directly tied into each other. You can like start the movies back to back like that, and like just go right into the story.
So after, the jangling man shows up, starts going after Ramon because Ramon's name starts getting written in the book.
Yes, and you
and-
find out his sort of backstory.
Yeah, before the jangling man shows
Yeah.
up, and you've learned that he's draft dodger. He dodged the draft because his brother died, and he said, "Fuck that,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that."
His
Right.
brother came back in pieces like the Jangling Man.
And the
Yep.
jangling man
That's
is
such a
a
good
representation
tie-in.
of his brother's pieces. Yep,
Holy shit.
his fear of having to go fight.
Right. And so for some reason the
I
Jangling
love
Man.
that there was actual contortionists who played that character.
Yeah, that was fucking awesome. So the Jangling Man throws the sheriff's body into the cell area where they're at, which gives Stella a chance to grab the keys.
Yep.
Excuse me.
And so she grabs the keys, gets Ramon out, and they run out to the car, but this is where they have to like sort of split up because he knows that the Jangling Man is following him. And so she's like, "You got to run to the house and figure out what's wrong with Sarah. Tell her the truth, that we know that she's innocent and that she needs to sort of just let it go, like convince her not to do this anymore." And so they do both make it to the house, and this is sort of like the ending, like the climax of what's happening. And she gets teleported basically, or like brought into the story, and she becomes Sarah in the story.
Yeah, she gets
She
put
sees
in
things
Sarah's
through her
position.
sight.
Yeah, and then gets like she's hiding from the family who's finding her, and then she gets thrown in the cell. And this is when she meets Sarah for the first time, which is like no longer just like a darkness that's everywhere. It's like an actual figure, and she shows up, and this is where she tries to convince her basically that we know what had happened and that you're innocent, and that she'll tell her story about what's going on. And so that was interesting because like with all horror films, it's always like the person versus something. And it's usually not just a single person. It's like an emotion, a feeling, like everyone else is against you. And in this case, it was like the sort of truth that needed to come out for her. And then also Sarah releasing her anger, like letting it go and not letting it manifest in something bad. And so that was interesting, the way that they pretty much had her convince her.
It was kind of like the little girl in the Silent Hill movie, which I
Right.
think was also the same for the games.
Yep. Yeah, totally. And so they ended up having this confrontation where she really convinces her that she needs to let all of her anger go and not let it take over her spirit and keep her there. And I guess this is how she gets her to like sort of disperse her power. And so she does like a crazy yelp or scream and like lets all of the energy loose in this sort
The
of like
classic ghost
yeah.
cry.
Well, it sort of like ends the narrative, but you know what? It wasn't like a super happy ending. Like everyone doesn't return. So everyone who's like gone missing.
I was
is
wondering
still
if they were
gone.
going to do that or not. Like, if once Sarah just lets go, like, would the other kids come back? But they didn't, which I thought, will they or won't they do that for this movie?
I feel like they didn't because one, they wanted to continue the story probably, but also so that you don't get the feeling of like, oh, they're all okay anyway. At the end of the film, you sort of get a melancholy feeling at the end of it where you're like, oh, like they're still missing. And you know, they show Stella, her dad, and who was it, Ruth,
Yeah.
who are leaving. I guess it looks like they're
Yeah,
leaving.
they're on their. Yeah, they're going somewhere with that book.
Yeah.
She's probably talked to her dad and been like, "Dad, this is the problem." And his
Right.
dad's like, "I guess I trust my daughter. I guess."
Yeah,
And so then they
yeah.
go. Ramon has overcomes his fear and then ends
And-
up joining.
Yep, goes straight into the military and is like, of course they'll exchange letters with Stella. So yeah, there's more story to tell, and I think they could totally like bring in a story with him being in Vietnam as well as her trying to figure out what's going on
Definitely.
with the story. And I think it ended well, and it was short. It didn't feel too long for
It
the
was just under
for the amount
like
of
2
story.
hours, like an hour and 50 minutes.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
I did not feel like it was that long.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
not. It was. Yeah, it would definitely
So,
kept me going.
Good
it kept
on
me
them
interested.
for doing the pacing and keeping you engaged for most of the story, and I liked it. I liked that the Her song got brought to life.
Absolutely, I loved. They used it a few times, and I loved that. Yeah.
They did the little tune just by itself without the lyrics, and then the older woman they speak to says some of the words, and she like goes to the song a little bit. But of course, everyone's like, "Oh, she's crazy. She gets like that sometimes."
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was interesting. But overall, I would recommend it, and I think you can go into it not knowing much
I
about
think
it.
you can also take your kids to go see this movie.
Yeah,
as well.
it wasn't like crazy scary.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few parts that got me though.
If you recently have read the books and you really liked the books,
Yeah.
this movie is definitely for you.
Oh, totally.
This is the movie. This
They
is
make
the movie
some
for
nice
you.
callbacks
Absolutely.
to the source material, and they didn't change too much about it where you're like unrecognizable. I don't know what this is. And the writers did a really good job. The cinematography was really solid too. There wasn't too many crazy shots, but there were a few that were notable, that like especially when the jangling man is coming together and it sort of rolls with his arm.
Yeah.
And so they have like interesting shots like that.
When Ramon pins him into the semi with the car,
Yes.
and then he just is stuck there, and then he falls apart.
Yeah, and
he
reconnects
reforms
himself.
and then comes back after him.
Well,
again.
he reconnects himself, and then he comes onto the screen and gives you a jump scare.
Yeah. My only problem with this movie is some of the lighting in the movie.
I felt like it was dark
Yeah,
at some points.
like when they
you
were in the
couldn't really
house,
see.
like when they were facing the other creatures besides the pale woman who the red light that was embodying those hallways.
That was good. That was a good way to
Yeah.
set the mood.
but
or
it's
the
sort of
tone.
like she kind of blends a little bit with also.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
because she's very like not stark white, but very just
Yeah, she's pretty pale.
She blends into
Yeah.
like the hospital walls and
Yeah.
everything
the
really
eggshell
well.
white, I guess if you could call it that.
Interesting. Yeah, I was trying to see I was thinking if there was anything that was bothering me. For some reason, the kids picking the locks bothered me.
That's yeah, I mean, now that you bring that up, I'm like, that is kind of weird.
Also, the
You know-
sheriff being so like aggressive.
I would understand Ramon knowing how to do it because of like some military background.
That's fair.
I could understand that. Her knowing how, I don't know. Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
What if Ramon?
You know, raised by her dad, maybe a thing.
You didn't even know what the dad did,
Yeah,
though.
exactly.
They didn't
So,
get into like what job he did.
That's why I'm like, maybe I can't. It's hard for me to logicalize it.
Maybe
Right.
because the town still does the paper mill. That's like
Yeah.
the big business that they have
Yeah,
to do
that,
for
that
small
might be
towns.
it. But good setting. I don't think this could have been done in a contemporary setting because people are too desensitized. to a lot of things, and then using that setting as well as not going so heavy into the jump scares or the gore was a good choice for them for the material, even though some of the source material is like it's pretty violent.
Oh yeah, definitely, it really is.
For a book published in the 80s for kids.
Right, yeah. It was like classified as children's.
And then the news said, don't let your kids read this shit because it's
love that.
bad for them.
Despite it being written by mostly children.
Right.
That's the funniest bit about it.
Yeah.
Like, most of
Oh,
the
yeah.
stories
Yeah.
are written by like 14, 16-year-olds.
Yeah,
Or
have
they're
the
really
imagination.
old folklore things.
So do you guys think that the story was unfinished, like on purpose, to kind of let you speculate or to like see if there's a continuation?
I believe so.
I would say it's an optional cliffhanger for them. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
totally.
It's definitely just like if we can make a second movie, we have something to base it off of.
Right.
If they don't, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'd be cool with it too.
I'd be fine with it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. It's like Lady and the Tiger don't know what's going to happen at the end. That's fine. You can leave it that way. Leave us guessing
Right.
forever, and we'll never know, and that's all right.
Oh, gotcha.
But or make another one. Maybe it'll be just as good. Maybe.
I think it would be because they have more material.
Yeah.
They would have like the second and third books they could pull from and
At
continue
least
the
this won't
story.
be a horror movie that will feel like sequelitis either.
Yeah.
That's true. So before we wrap it up, the final question, I guess, is would you guys recommend it? Should people go see it?
Yeah.
Most-
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I think it was fun. I think you should definitely go watch it with not too many expectations, and you usually enjoy your movies like that.
It's a fun movie just to
Yeah.
sit down and relax and watch it. Just,
It's solid for filmmaking. Like it was good cinematography, it's good writing. The actors are phenomenal in it.
For cinematography, before we go, I want to point out that the ending with the house, with the flashing back between reality and then the
Yes.
false reality, was very cool.
Yeah.
that was cut really well. Really well.
So when
Basically, when Ramon
yeah.
and Stella are in like alternate realities of the house.
yes.
So when she's in like where the family's still alive and in Sarah's position, and then when Ramon's just being chased by the
Oh right.
jangling man.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. I think that was really good, and I think that those two writers will definitely go on to make some more stuff, and I'm excited to see what else they got. But yeah,
it's even nice when you have like competent filmmakers make something.
right. But I think that was pretty much it.
Mhm.
And before I let everybody go, I want to remind everyone that we're super easy to find. We're on all the streaming services, so we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, as well as SoundCloud, which is where our main stuff goes up, and then we've also got our Facebook and our Instagram pages, so feel free to comment. There's stuff we miss, discuss things, or tell us we're wrong about a certain point, and we're definitely willing to talk about it more. But thank you guys for coming in and talking about this movie, going to see the movie with me.
Yeah.
I hope everyone has a good night.
Of course, man.
Spooky.